For more reaction to this story, let's bring in retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's also a senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research. Tony, great to see you.
Uma, thank you for having me. Good to be on.
The fact that they have the black boxes, of course, is great news, and they will learn fairly quickly what led to this crash.
Right, and I think the notable thing here, Uma, is that this aircraft was essentially at or near cruising altitude at 30,000 feet. So to bring it down with a military weapon would have required something along the lines of an S-300, a Russian-made high-altitude air defense system, or a Patriot or something along that line. So at this point in time, I find I'm totally skeptical at any terror claims. With that said, the other alternative to terror is obviously a bomb on the aircraft, which then would explain the quote-unquote technical difficulty. So I think we are just too early to actually determine what brought it down. The black boxes will have a huge, bounty of evidence to what happened, but it clearly could go either way right now. I'm still kind of leaning towards technical failure at this point, though.
Well, that region, of course, a volatile area of the Sinai Peninsula, and we are also learning that 2 major airlines in Europe have diverted their aircraft away from that region until there is actually clear evidence of what led to this crash.
And that's very wise. And I think everybody has to understand that an overabundance of caution is very wise. But with that said, you can't stop living life. You can't stop flying. So I think to avoid areas of conflict like this is wise. But again, Uma, I just don't think a shoulder-held surface-to-air missile could have done this based on the altitude of the aircraft when it came down from 30,000 feet. But again, you have to remember the enclosed security mechanisms. People putting a bomb on an aircraft is always something you have to watch out for.
So. We're putting up new video up there for our viewers to see the site of that crash as you were talking there. As they continue with this investigation, they will also look very closely at the transmissions that took place between the pilot and the control tower, knowing that he did make one call to say that there were some issues and then just disappeared.
Right. And again, that could be a bomb going off on the aircraft. It could have been in the hold. There's any number of options regarding something having been placed on the aircraft prior to it taking off or remotely detonated. But again, I don't think if ISIS was able to do that, then we have larger problems we have to start looking at. They're clearly, ISIS is adaptive. They're very smart. We cannot basically dismiss them on the face of this. With that said, though, I don't believe for a minute this was done with a weapon of war, a surface-to-air missile, at least in this case.
And shifting gears just a bit, we know this news comes on the heels of what's been happening with our own special forces who are going to be heading to the region, to Syria. The White House deciding finally after 2 years to send in up to 50 special ops advisors to help in the fight against terrorists there. Your reaction?
Well, look, Uma, we've been at war in that area for a while now. I think this is just the reality of the White House announcing what's been going on. Look, we've had a very large special operations force in or near Erbil. I don't want to get into specifics. They're very much sensitive right now, but yes, this is the right way to go. And I'm not for a minute proposing we should put a large land army back into the battlefield. What we're doing here is correct. We're leading with special operations forces. General Dunford, Ash Carter, the new leadership in the Pentagon are taking a hard look at the strategy, what's working, what's not working. I think some of that's going to be require them to adapt tactics. This is a new tactic. This is not something new per se, but this is something that's going to be essentially expanded, and necessarily so. Because ultimately, Uma, the answer still remains is that we have to lead with our allies. The Arab nations there have to get their act together. You and I talked about our proposal of an Arab NATO. And let's face it, with the Russians showing up, you now have what we're calling the Damascus Pact. You've got Russia, Iran, and Syria together in kind of a Warsaw Pact-esque organization, and we're proposing a NATO-type organization to counter it. So I think in long terms, we got to look at how we can enable our allies to do the heavy lifting to put their boots on the ground. Our boots on the ground should be very minimal, like this, and doing those very precise, very hard things of special operations forces going in and destabilizing ISIS leadership.
Let me ask you, what does this mean specifically from the White House that they're going to be advising the forces on the ground there? The fact that they are special ops forces who are very good and highly trained. Do we expect to see any of them in combat?
Well, yes. Come on. The Pentagon's been splitting hairs about this. We are in combat. let me be clear. People are living and dying every day on the battlefield. We just had the Delta operator killed about 2 weeks ago. There's no doubt that our guys are going into harm's way. And to lead effectively, Uma, you've got to go out with these folks. You cannot simply advise from behind the wire. You've got to be out there when something goes wrong. These forces need essentially field, on-the-spot correction and guidance. So, yes, our men and women are going to be in harm's way. I think it's necessary to be effective in it. Don't invest resources if you're not in it to win it. And I think that's where we're at right now. There's a realization that we cannot phone this in from behind the wire. We have to be out there leading. We don't have to have, we don't have to have tens of thousands of people, but we have to have the most effective people we have leading those allies who are most effective to do the hard work to defeat ISIS.
All right. The stakes remain quite high. Tony Shaffer, great to see you again. Thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.